Hello, everybody. This is Gino Johnson, CEO of Champions for Veterans, and I am so pumped for today's guest on our podcast, Convos with Heroes. We got Brenda Smith on with her, and she has just an extraordinary story, so much to share, and we're so excited to give her a platform to share it. But of course, I want to say hi to my dad, who's on with us today. Hey, Pops.
Hey, son, how you doing? I'm so excited to be here with a great American hero, Brenda Smith on Convos with Heroes. Y'all, you're getting excited. The pre-talk has got me excited. I'm going to shut it down and let her do her thing in a minute.
Beautiful. Yeah, absolutely. Brenda's got a story. She gave us a good solid intro, and it was so much information. I couldn't even have it all down to share. But you know what? I'm gonna let Brenda share because she has just a ton to share. But just as a brief intro, she served in the Army for 3 years and has just done amazing things ever since. So Brenda, so happy to have you on with us. How you doing?
I'm doing great this morning. I'm doing phenomenal out here in Nashville, Tennessee.
Up in Nashville, Tennessee. Love it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, look, I'm excited to hear about what you got going up there in Nashville. So, but before, to kind of get going into this interview, just tell us who Brenda Smith is. We want to hear who you are.
Okay, well, this is how I always, even in interviews and elevator speeches, I call myself a global Southern Pacific Northwest woman. I was born in Europe. My father was in the military, so I was born in 1959 in Germany, in Kaiserslautern, Germany, Landstuhl Hospital. My roots are in Mississippi. My mom and dad are from Clarkston, Mississippi, the Delta, the home of the juke joints, Sam Cooke, Ike Turner, Howlin' Wolf, B.B. King. So I grew up with that rich history in the South. And whenever my daddy would change duty stations, I loved to go back to Clarkston, Mississippi. And at that time, what people don't realize, we had our own cities within ourselves, African-American community. I never would see white people when I went to Mississippi because we had our banks, our movie theaters, our hospitals, everything. So I had, and the church and the music and just the history. And so having the roots in Mississippi, I remember, I was born in 1959, but I remember, we're dealing with racial unrest right now in 2020, 2021, but I remember Robert F. Kennedy being murdered, John F. Kennedy, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Medgar Evers, and during the Vietnam War. So I grew up in that time of unrest. But when I did join the military, we weren't in a war. My daddy really didn't want me to go. He served 35 years, rest in peace. He passed in 2007. And it's because of him who picked cotton, and I might get a little emotional, but wanted a better life for me and my brother. And I have been able to work for 3 global brands, Nike, Intel, now Lyft, and in a role of providing economic equity for underserved communities. And in particular, at this point, we're addressing the needs that happened with the George Floyd. So because of him making that decision, born in Germany, and I was born there in 1959, then we went back. In 1965, I started kindergarten, first grade there, and then we went back in 1971, and I did my whole junior high there, right? So, and we were stationed, as I said, in Kaiserslautern, we were in Baumholder, we were in Krailsheim, one of those godforsaken places, nobody's there. And then when I joined, I worked for the 21st Replacement in Rhein-Main, Germany, and we processed all of the soldiers throughout Europe. So I had a prime assignment because my daddy, I finished college 1980, really no work. And my daddy came home and that recruiter was sitting up at his house. Oh my God, he threw a freaking fit. And so then he goes, this is the kind of job she's gonna have. Because I didn't know nothing. I should have talked to my daddy, but my dumb self, you should have asked him, okay? Because he was 11 Bravo, hurt his back, and he always had back issues, So he said 75 Charlie. I didn't know what it was, but my daddy looked out for me, right? And so I never had to go to the field. So he picked that. So I would always work in processing and out processing centers. And so that was really a good deal. And then I ended up getting married in Germany, and my son was born in Germany. And what was so ironic, a couple of years ago, he went back to where he was born. So he's like, oh, I made it back, because he was little when he left. And then when I talk about my Southern roots, and I grew up during the time where we were very proud Black people. So at work, when I was speaking to the executive leadership team, I say to them, do you guys know who James Brown is? Yeah, I said, he had a song called I don't want you to give me nothing. Open up the door, I'll get it myself. I don't want integration. I want true communication. I just want to be a man, right? So I had all of this and this proud Black people from down south. Because, you know, Ranger, you remember we had Marvin Gaye, what's going on? For God's sake, we got to give more power to the people. So I grew up in that time. But what happened was after that time and all of the fighting and everything, we were tired. So when I went to college, I ended up, and I graduated from a military base, Fort Campbell High School in Fort Campbell, Kentucky.
Right.
Everything, my whole life, I lived on a military base. I never did not live on the outside, right?
Right.
So I lived in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. We were in Fort Devens. We were in Fort Jackson. We were in Fort Benning. We were at Redstone Arsenal. And then in Germany, right? So yeah, my whole life, and I ended up graduating from Fort Campbell High School. And so
let me ask you a question on that, because I know, you know, listen, I'm loving the conversation, Brenda.
You can stop because I just keep talking, but yeah.
No, it's really good because, I mean, I did 20 years in the Army, and I would tell everybody I went in at 17, retired at 37. And when I got out, it was a culture shock.
Yeah.
Because, and my wife tried to warn me, the civilian world is not like the military structure and things like that. You growing up, it's amazing with your dad serving, you know, over 30, 35 years in the military, and you basically grew up as a military brat for real. How was the culture shock when you got out of your father's house, going to college and into the real world, as they say? What was the differences?
It really wasn't much because I didn't have a father that was like, you know, this staunch military person. Now remember, so we grew up, you know, on the military base. I had Black friends, white friends, all kind of friends, right? But then we still had our culture. So no, that wasn't a culture shock. I think more of the culture shock was my behind deciding to join the military. No, now y'all can look at me now. I was like, I can say this now because I'm 62, I'll be 63. I was this pretty girl that looked like a model that wasn't supposed to be doing none of that. And I was educated, right? Right. So the problem was that our parents, I don't think, really prepared us for the world. It's like you go to high school, you go to college, you don't know what to do, you don't know how to balance a checkbook. You just, you know, they just glad that we got out the civil rights movement, go get an education, get a good job, or go work for the government, or, you know, that was that kind of thing, right? So we really didn't have a lot of what the kids have now, which they don't appreciate it, but we had to get out and figure it out. And I think that was the good thing. And then when I joined the military, I just kind of regret that I didn't really try to talk to my father about my experiences, because I have 5 brothers. I was the only one that joined, right? Right. Now it's benefited me to this day because I have my free medical with the VA. I was able to get my military disability, which is, I had done it on my own and I had gotten 50%, and I never talked about it. And you know, we'll go circular. I tell stories, right? Yeah. So when I got out the military, so I was sexually harassed a lot, and military sexual trauma. So when I got out, you know, I got married, had a baby, and I found out then, well, if you have a baby, you can get out. So I just got out because, and I never told people in corporate anyway that I was a military. I didn't talk about it, right? Because I was so distraught that I was this young Black girl that was in Europe and the world was open to me, that I had to experience that kind of mess, right? And the way that my father raised me, I'm not gonna fall prey to any of that, you know? So I was like, not fighting, but you know, I was my mouth. Yeah. So I got out because of that. Yeah.
I want to shift to something because right now you've blown my mind a whole lot with your story. And I want to get you to pinpoint on a couple of things. First off, thank you for your service. And I'm just so impressed, Brenda, with you, really. It's like so much, so I want to go a lot of places. But how does a young Black girl, as you say, a pretty girl, go from the Army and that environment? And, you know, you're just a couple of years older than me. I'll be 60 this year. Okay. And I know when you said military sexual trauma and harassment, listen, when I joined Army in 1980, there was no kind of female rights. I can't imagine being a young, pretty girl in the Army during that time. because it was totally different. They would say literally anything to you while you're walking down the street. I mean,
or in basic training, your training guy. Yeah,
that's
basic
how,
training.
and people don't understand. You know, I do, because that's my era and we're the same age right in there. And plus, I was in the military in that time and I saw what went down. So this is my question for you. How did you make a shift? First off, how did you even believe you could get in corporate America? Tell us some of your journeys into that corporate world and being successful with Nike, Intel, and Lyft. Just kind of, I mean, how do you even jump to that?
So let me, I really want to reiterate that strong Southern, proud Black people, okay?
Okay.
So my mom, if I tell this story, I tell people, I was raised up in a house with a woman that was born in 1883. Wow. She was my auntie. Auntie died in 1979, December 31st. So basically almost 1980. I was 22 when she died. But my aunt, and I'll send some pictures to you, my aunt, she was a teacher. They owned land right out of slavery. I have pictures of my great-great-great-grandmother that's in her casket, and they had the wake in the house. But auntie was a teacher. She took my mother in, because my grandfather, you know, he was spoiled, a little brat, and then they had 5 kids. And so they were going off to California. My mama wanted to stay there, so my aunt raised my mother. So when I said my mother went to a private Catholic boarding school in Lake Charles, Louisiana, a Black woman in the 50s, and she got kicked out of 3 HBCUs. So my mother went to Stillman, she went to Alabama State and Tennessee State, right? So I am not the first or so generation of education. You have to think about Black people down south in Mississippi. They were teachers, remember? PhDs, teachers, all of that. So I had that. I was just more regretful that I didn't really pay attention at that time. And in, you know, 1977, 78, the HBCUs were kind of in disrepair. And we had just forgot about the things that made us who we were, right?
Right.
So when you think about all the Black people during that time, they all went to HBCUs. My mama, my daddy, everybody.
Prairie
right?
View, Grambling.
Yeah, everything. Mississippi Valley State.
Mississippi Valley, right there.
You know, Jerry Rice, that's where Jerry Rice went, you know, and I'm so glad that it's changed with Deion Sanders now, Jackson State, and these young Black boys going to these HBCUs, because it was a very strong, so I had this strong foundation. You were supposed to go to college, right?
Yeah.
But at that time, you know, mom and dad, they're busy trying to work, raise kids. He was like an E6 in the military. He didn't make that much money. He got 4 children, you know, in the field doing all that. You know, my mom, that's another story. But, you know, they're trying to figure stuff out. But I always knew about education, because so when I only got a 2-year degree, I never felt comfortable, right?
Okay.
I never felt comfortable. So, and then at that time, because I used to move from different duty stations all the time, I became insecure because they move you. We moved so many times, and I'm moving in the middle of the year. Then you're missing some of the key pieces. So I really wasn't that good in math, right? And then I was shy. I didn't want to talk in front of people. So then when I
not you, Brenda Smith. No, absolutely not. No, you were shy. Okay.
Yeah, and I still am relatively, but I care about people, and I really want to give out information, right?
Yeah.
And I want people to experience what I know is available for them. So anyway, so I decided, so I got married. I had the 2-year degree. I got married in the military. I took a couple classes at University of Maryland over in, then my ex, you know, slowly taking classes. And then what happened was he was stationed in Fort Wainwright, Alaska. So I was there 4 years. And I was like, this will be a time for me to get back. But no, this is what I was going to say. So I did not go ahead and major in a 4-year degree because I didn't know math and I was scared to talk in front of people. So I go get secretarial administration because I can type 90-something words a minute and do shorthand 100, 100 and something words shorthand. So I did that because I didn't have to do math and didn't have to do to speak in front of people, right? So that was crazy. So when I was in Alaska, I was like, I was around people. I knew I was smarter than they were. I knew I could do better. And I was just being a secretary. And that just was not in my DNA for me to just settle for that, right? So I addressed my fears is what I did. So I went and I was working at the University of Alaska so I could take 2 classes per quarter free, right? For semester free. So I went and talked to the person over the School of Business because I had like D's in accounting and D's in statistics and D's. And so he said, listen, let's start here and address your math. Let's get that together. So I went back and started over accounting 101, accounting 102, took statistics, went back and took algebra, and then took, what is that other one? Statistics, algebra, calculus, right? Then what happened was there was an African-American woman teacher there, and she said, well, they give free tutoring to Black students. So join a little Black student unit. So this one young man, white guy, he took me through this. And what I finally realized, I clicked in my head, some stuff is just by definition, right? Because, I was trying to figure out, like, what is this -1 over this parentheses? He said, that's just by definition, and it means this. Then I found out that in math, you learn it by rote. You just have to keep doing it over and over. So I know how to do a friggin' quadratic equation. I want you to know. All right. So anyway.
Come on, Brenda.
Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, man. That's amazing. I'm a big fan of math, but you said something. I don't want to interrupt your story.
No, go ahead.
You mentioned something about just addressing your fears. I want to kind of get into that a little bit more. Like, what would you say, like, knowing everything you know now, to that young woman who was in that position, being a secretary, not doing exactly what you knew you had the potential to do to address those fears? Like, what would you say to yourself at that point in your life?
And I had children too, and I was married too, right? So that's a whole stuff together that you're dealing with, and you want the best for your children. I would say that you really need to pay attention and enjoy your young life, and school, pay attention, because what you don't realize is that when you don't, and you get in corporate environments, you get in corporate spaces, there's people that did, right? And then you're competing with them and you have this big gap. But my gap in math was not my fault, that I found out, because we moved every year. So it would be every time I go to a different school system, a different state, they were doing, so I missed some foundations. And so when people look at me, you know what I did? I went back and took 055 math, okay? Integer, 0, 1, 2, 3. I start at the base level. So you got to start back. Don't let it stop you. Go back. And I have advised and coached some of my friends about getting their degrees. And my one girlfriend, she's an example. I said, Jeannie, just go and take a class at a time. Then you'll feel like you take 2 classes. So she got her 2-year degree. Then the next thing you know, she just kept it on. She got a 4-year degree. But a lot of this stuff isn't, today it's a lot of this get stuff quick, do this. Nobody takes the time to build a strong foundation of information. So I need to talk about that. I went and took the 055 math class at Portland Community College, right? So I started back from there. And so then this is what happened. So we're in Alaska, and I was starting to, get my, your web feet. You're starting to get your, what's the word I want to say? You're getting your mojo. I'm starting to feel myself a little bit that this is possible, right? And then I want it for my children. And I didn't want my children not to be able to finish, right? So my son, he went to North Carolina until he finished in 4 years, magna cum laude. My daughter went a different path, but she's 35 now, and she works for JetBlue, and she got accepted in a scholars program. And even though she's a single parent with 2 kids, now she's like, oh, mama, now I need to do my LinkedIn. Now I need to do my resume. Okay, I've been telling you this for years. But she knows that her mama did it, and then her brother did it. And what happened was, when we, because I finished my MBA, so in the year 2004, my son graduated from college, my daughter graduated from high school, and I finished my MBA, and I threw a big party for all of us completing these goals together, right? Okay. So, but back to my aunt. So this strong Black woman, descendant of slaves in this country, one generation removed from slavery, my auntie paid for me to go to Europe in 1976. And I was the only Black girl, and I was part of and then people would see me and just say, you need to go. And I didn't even know where I was going. My mother said, you're going to go. Right? I was like, okay, here I am, deal with these. Okay. So People to People Student Ambassador, it's an international program that was started, I think, about President Eisenhower for interaction between American students and those students in Europe. And we were like ambassadors for the United States to spread goodwill. Right. So I went to 7 countries, and I was in Greece, and I had—
How old were you at the time? How old were you?
17, my junior year, 1976, because I graduated in 1977, my junior year. So I'm over there, the only Black girl, and I had to deal with a little racism because the general's daughter that I went to high school want to know how this Black girl, how she get to go, none of your business, okay? I'm here because you, anyway. So I had to deal with that. I've had to cuss a couple of them out every now. She likes me now, but anyway, I had to deal with that. So, but I stayed with a family in Greece. I stayed with a family in Austria, Germany, went to Amsterdam, Hungary, and went to Italy and a couple other places, right? But, oh, this what else that I would tell them, really, the opportunities that you have, pay attention, enjoy that. Because I had a 6'7" guy that was in love with me because we was partying at the discotheque all that whole week. And he played basketball at the University of Athens and used to write, and he was in love with me. And I was like, I was supposed to have this life, right? My aunt, descendant slave, they set me up for me. If I wanted to marry a Greek guy, I could have, and lived all in Europe and done all of that, right? So I didn't really understand the depth of the opportunity. And sometimes you lose your way. And then now I finally found myself again, and I think about choices and decisions that I've made. So anyway, because my auntie, if you think about elocution and writing and how you say and how you carry yourself, and you don't sit gat-legged and you don't cuss in public and you don't smoke cigarettes, and a woman carries herself this certain kind of way, right? So that comes from that type of teaching and being very proud. And I have these pictures of my family, right, that I'm pulling together. But you have to, when you have the opportunity, do not squander it. One of the things that my daughter said, that she squandered a lot of opportunities that were provided for her. My daughter's principal was a Black woman. And then when I had to travel and I was at Nike, she would look out for my child. Aaron's like, nobody want to be bothered with it. Kind of go with a principal, but she didn't really now. And she wanted her to go to Korea. We wanted to go to Japan. We had these international students in my home. She didn't want to do it. But sometimes when you are hanging out with people that don't have the opportunity like you, because even though I was working for Nike, I started off as an admin at $23,000 a year. And so people were jealous because of that, but I was struggling with my children, right? And I wanted to have something better. So I go through this, and I go, my ex-husband gets stationed down in Fort Hood, Texas. And I said, don't look at me. I'm not going to work. I'm going to finish my degree, right? And so I finished it in 18 months at the University of Mary Hardin Baylor in Belton, Texas. Then I got a divorce, went on about my business. So anyway, so I did that. And then what happened was, then he wanted some, so I worked at night, 10 at night till 6 in the morning doing medical transcriptions. So I was a medical transcriptionist too. Right? I always used to be a Kelly girl, because when you move to the different duty stations, I would be a Kelly girl, right? And that's how I could immediately, because I could type 90-some words a minute, and I could do shorthand, right? Because you have to, you used to take the calls from the managers, you have to write the notes and do all that. It was more of that. So I got that done. And so my mom, so what happened was, my ex-husband from Portland, Oregon. So when my father retired from the military, my mother's like, I don't know where you're going, but I'm going to Portland wherever Brenda is, because his mama is there. So whenever he go visit his mama, he can come visit us. So my mom and dad retired in 1985 from Stuttgart, Germany, and moved to Oregon. Then my daddy joined like the reserve, and he became a captain. So he was still volunteering all the time. Then he was in the Buffalo Soldiers, and then he got a job at the post office. So we just made this life there in Portland, Oregon. So when I came back to Portland, my mother was saying to me, I think you should work at Nike, right? I was like, okay, because I had applied for Nike, like when I first moved to, after I finished getting married and had my son, we moved back to Oregon, and my ex-husband went to Korea. So went to the Urban League of Portland. Both of my jobs that I got at Nike and Intel were via the Urban League and Jesse Jackson protests and stuff. But I went to the Urban League, that was in the early 80s, and they had me go out to Nike. But Nike was that sports thing, and I was in the military, and I think they thought I was too rigid. But I thought I was saying what I was supposed to say. I didn't know how to interview. So fast forward, 1995, I go to the Urban League. They had a program for dislocated workers, and one of the guys said that Nike comes once a month to, recruit. Can't promise you anything, but I just finished my degree in marketing, in business marketing. And, the guy came, took my resume. The lady called me, and it was an admin job for $23,000, but I took it, right? And so then from there, I was at Nike doing that. Then there was a big layoff, and I had learned about supply chain and procurement and purchasing from a friend, and I didn't know that that was a discipline. I was like, look, I've been doing account management. I used to do the Wayne word processor, system administrator. I said I used to order supplies and all of that. And I said, that's procurement, that's purchasing, right? So I began to look at the Institute for Supply Management had this certification for, supply management. So I had been having this another thing I'll tell people, always have conversations with your managers about what you want, the things that you would like to do and where you would like to grow. So when they were doing all these layoffs at Nike in 1998, our director at the time said, look, nobody's going to be laid off. But what they did was they looked throughout the company to see what jobs were available and then what skill sets matched. I mean, these were two Black men that helped me do this, right? Ken, his name, I forget him, but I always think about him. My other one, God, I love him to death. But anyway, so
Brenda, let me add something into there, right there, because I like to say this. In the military, what we call it in special forces, being cross-trained, right?
Yes.
So you got your main job you do, which may be in a military context, weapons, like I was a special forces weapons, but what people don't realize, I've also given Novocaine shots overseas and pulled teeth like a dentist. I'm not a dentist, but I've pulled teeth all day in South America overseas. Can't mess with Joe.
Oh no, this is a lot of work. These are mine. Just want to
But what I tell people all the time, what you're saying, you're working a job, but you were cross-trained in other things. It wasn't just what you did. And then how did that open a door for you?
So then you have to identify how these skills are transferable, right? So what happened was, so then when there was layoffs, because the sales were down, because they had misjudged the market, but what they found out in a procurement organization where we had a lot of waste, right? And that you really need, because Nike was still a relatively new company, you needed to come in, they paid a company, Price Waterhouse, to come in and look to see where they were spending their money and their dollars. And so we were brought in to help figure out how we could save money, right? We can help contribute to the bottom line. So when I came in and they said, okay, Brenda, here goes yours. It was a promotion. It was like a senior procurement specialist. I said, so if I had lost my job, if I had gone to look for one, I would have had that. Then that gave me a little bit more money, right? For me and my kids. And so people were laid off, took my behind over to the Global Procurement Organization. It was just purchasing at the time. So I was there, and there was his guy, he's Brad Dean. He was our director, really nice guy, Jehovah's Witness. And so he could tell who I was. And he said, Brenda, because I was like, I'd be sitting at the decks and punching purchase orders and things like that. And it just didn't fit. I can do it. I'm technical, but my personality is something else. So he came to me and he said, Brenda, I have something for you. He said, this has to do with our Minority and Women Business program. There's an event that's happening. Go into the community. We can't promise them anything and say, look, Nike is here. We understand we need to do more, but here I am, right? And so then he ended up leaving. And so we had an event that the guy had paid for. So I go and invite the president of Brand Jordan. He's in the news right now. If you saw that article about the president of Brand Jordan that had murdered someone, and he finally is telling the story. But
I saw that yesterday on TV.
Oh yeah, I know him, have pictures, everything, right? So I would invite all the Black senior people I knew or Hispanic people I knew that, Nike has this table, blah, 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 and invited the new director. So the new director, his name is Jim Olson, or I forget his name, Jim. He comes like, who is this Black girl? What is she doing? Invite all these people. She reports to me, right? So he shows up. We learn about the program. He gets on board. He gives me money, resources, and tools, and joins organization. And I blew it up talking about how we need to make sure that we have an inclusive supply base. And you can Google me and everything like that. So I blew it up. And so then after that, it was part-time. Then I started giving my business case of why it needed to be full-time, was part of organizations that gave me data and information. So created my own job, made it full-time, blew the program up. And so much so, it was successful. I got so many Black people and Hispanics and others and diverse companies and women contracts. They still remember me to this day, right? And so then, so that kind of blew up, and that was phenomenal. I was going across the country, meeting all these different companies. And then it was like, I really wasn't getting paid much money. And I felt like I should have been paid more. But since I wasn't getting paid as much, I saw that they were paying this one other lady for her to finish her degree. I had my degree. I was like, oh, I want to finish my master's. So I went to my director at the time, Lisa, and I said, let me break this down. I said, you guys paid for us to go to conventions, which is $3,000 for like a couple of days. I said, there's this program, it's $22,000 for 2 years, $3,000 a quarter out of your budget, right? And then I got Nike to pay for my MBA. Then they didn't do like I wanted them. And Intel, I threw a big event at Nike. Intel said, come on over here. That's because Jesse Jackson was boycotting in the tech area. And at Nike, he was boycotting up there out in Beaverton, Oregon. So I got my job through Urban League and boycotting Jesse Jackson. And I got my job at Lyft because of George Floyd and the blood of these people. And I will not forget it. So, because I was 62 and they wasn't thinking about none of this.
Wow. This is
so
incredible.
You see how that works?
Oh yeah, no, it's really fascinating.
Yeah. And I was homeless for a while too. I slept on a friend's couch for 3 years. When I got divorced, my mother had a stroke. Been taking care of my mother. She's in a nursing home for the last 9 years, right?
Wow.
I've leveraged state and federal programs to pay for my PMP. I got my project management for homeless veterans because I had houses and I had married again. You know, I'd been around the world, finished my MBA in Brazil, but you know, you're a preacher, Ranger. I'm not a Christian no more, but I know how to base and I know how to bound. I know how to do with and I know how to do without, right? Yeah. And so you have to be able, and they look at me, but they don't know my journey and what I've been through, right? And I took off and was a nursing home to my mother for a whole year. I did that by myself and it almost killed me, right? So then I was able to get a job at Fort Jackson working for a small African-American disabled-owned business. Was the worst experience of my life down there in Fort Jackson, South Carolina. Because here I come, people can tell your presence and I just show up as Brenda. So they just outright didn't like me out the bat. Then I wasn't gonna let them just say any old thing to me, right? Yes, ma'am, yes, sir. So got fired from that.
So do you speak, I know you travel a lot. I mean, Brazil, that's German. You speak German. What about Portuguese?
No, I was only there for like 2 weeks, but my point is program ended in Brazil. I've had these experiences. No, German, yes. Yeah, because
you grew up going to school in Germany. So I'll imagine.
And I had to take it every day in German. And then when I went to high school in Germany, in Huntsville, I took German and they didn't have it at Fort Campbell. Then I took it in college, right?
Ich spreche nur ein bisschen Deutsch, aber ich spreche der Berliner Deutsch.
Ja, meine Name ist Brenda Schmidt. Ich war geboren in Kaiserslautern, Deutschland. Und mein Vater ist James A. Smith. Meine Mutter, ich habe 5 Brüder and sisters, something like that, right? So I can go,
ich bin Germany, you said your dad's name and your mom's name. I got a little bit of it. I hadn't spoken in a long time.
But you know, but my brother,
that's good stuff.
My brother speaks it fluently. Now he didn't pay attention, but he was over there working on there, right? I know all of the subject verb agreement stuff, but he speaks it fluently because he married a German. My niece is half German. Yes.
Oh wow! And your brother still lives over there.
Oh no, he did, but no, they're in Portland, Oregon. He was over there for years, though.
Oh yeah, okay, got it.
We older now, you know. We counting up the years, now the decades, you know.
Oh no, oh look, hey, I'm with you. You know, the funny part about it, I was stationed in Berlin, Germany in 1982, and I was there from 82 to 84 when the Berlin Wall was there.
I went there. You know, they let you go on the trip. I went behind the curtain.
Yeah. And so it's amazing. You're right now.
On these walls, okay.
Yeah, you're right. We look at stuff now, you know, in decades. Like, wait a minute, that was 10. Oh no, that was 30 years ago or 40 years ago. Absolutely. So what do you see now? Now you with Lyft. Tell us about that. What are you doing? What are you doing with Lyft? Give us that story. What exactly? What's your job now?
So my job is I'm director of supply chain equity, and I've kind of coined that term. You know, they have diversity initiatives, but that's just hiring people. But where the money resides is in contracts, right? And what we're tasked to do is make for sure that when there are contract opportunities, right, that the economically disadvantaged businesses are included in that process, because it's really about economics. And as I shared with my executive team, that it's about the haves and the have-nots right now, right? It's about George Floyd. I've had a lot of privilege, but George Floyd, they challenged his $20. Nobody would ever challenge my $20, right? But it's about having an equitable supply chain and then really bringing to corporation companies like yourselves and what you're doing. And so last week we had a really good event where I brought in probably 30, 40 from staffing to professional services to supply chain excellence, so they can really see the real people that can provide the goods and services and can take us from where we are into the future. So I call it,
Wow.
we want to narrow the racial economic wealth gap, right? So our goal is by year 2036 is to narrow the racial economic wealth gap. And there's three ways that that can happen. It can be, number one, make sure that every company, government entity, anyone, they increase utilization with minority or economically disadvantaged business 1% per year for the next 15 years, because right now we have a 333-year wealth gap. That's number one. Then number two, you want to make for sure that there's opportunities across the board, not just janitorial services, not just catering, not just promotional supplies. You know, they don't know all the things that we can do because we're creatives. And I had shared with my manager when I was interviewing, he's like, you know, Brenda, we want to have an innovative program. I was like, look, Black people are innovative. Eli Whitney didn't create no cotton gin. It was them Black people down there picking them little cotton picks in their hands and trying to find a better way how to do things. So innovation happens at where the work is being done. So yes, we're all about innovation, right? And so find opportunities in software development, in advertising, creativity, technology. We're there. And I share that sometimes people think that we've come from another planet. We are Americans. We went to the same schools you went to. We sat next to you. So I don't understand this concept. But the problem is, like I said, James Brown said, I don't want you to give me nothing. Open up the door. I will get it myself. And I also drove Lyft for 5.5 years, right? I won't say the other ones drove for them, but majority Lyft for 5.5 years. So they saw that I had an MBA, worked for these global brands, right? Plus I did that. Plus I was a veteran. Plus I was a Black, all of this. And then I had this passion around it. And so what I explained to them was, listen, so when I, got my job at Lyft, I was able to buy my mother the Cadillac of the automated wheelchairs to roll around in the nursing home. I couldn't get that on no driver's salary, right? So they understood that. I said, so when you hire companies, they and therefore will use more Lyft products. They therefore will hire more people, bring more money into the community, and then that money can be recycled back and say, Lyft is a great brand. Lyft, I'm going to use Lyft. You don't use Uber. Like when I was at Nike, I used Nike and I didn't use Adidas, right? So now when I left after 10 years, I did go buy a pair of Adidas, right? And so then my kids could wear, but they knew not to bring it on campus. So I'm there. And then
in other words, you're a product of the product. You're a product of the product.
Exactly. So then, and the third thing is that I bring qualified, vetted suppliers to play, because when opportunities become available, I want to make for sure that they're included. So I'm responsible for the program planning, the implementation, policies, planning, tools, systems, training, educating people on supply chain equity, and making sure that we narrow the racial economic wealth gap. And right now, Blacks are the ones that need the most help and the constructive help. So let's make sure we address that. Then you go, to Hispanics and Native Americans and Asians. But I really focus on, we do business with everybody. Our program is inclusive and diverse, but we need to narrow the racial economic wealth gap and help those that are less than grow and scale also and participate in this American dream. It's really the haves and the have-nots. And until America addresses this, if America had taken the position that Germany took, because you can't be having that swastika, you can't be saying that stuff. They also paid reparations to the Jews, but here, we got out of slavery, and then they come with Jim Crow. They just keep doing us wrong. And then we did build up something, they burn it down, right? So, a lot of this stuff is we got to address it and root it out at its core. And until America does that, we're going to keep having all of these incidences, right?
Well, let me ask you a question. It's amazing we're having this conversation because, the retired Army vet, many of my buddies started contract companies going overseas.
Yeah.
And you got to understand, Special Forces, Green Beret, I'm talking about guys making just ridiculous money. An example would be, one of my buddies got over there and got connected with people, and all of a sudden he wasn't a contractor, but he knew somebody that was a contractor, and he got this multi-million-dollar contract overseas to build schools and this, that, and the other. And I go to his house in Florida. I saw this with my own eyes, and it was ridiculous.
But
5,000 square feet, retired E9.
E9, yeah.
And the house was 5,000 square feet, swimming pool, Mercedes. And first I'm walking saying, this ain't E9 pay to get this.
Oh,
But
some E6s and E2s and E3s have got these government contracts.
Yeah,
and,
but
you know,
it was who he knew, and
yeah.
no, he was not a minority, but he was able to get in there and snooze and get that contract. And I
Well, you
thought
know,
about
the
some of the
government,
same things.
Mhm.
I knew just as much as he did from a standpoint of education, because like you said, we went to the same schools,
It's the connections.
Green Beret, but it's getting those connections.
It's the connections, and I am the connector. Okay, and I
Yeah,
told you that when I met you. I can send.
yeah,
We haven't really dug deep in it yet, Gino, because I haven't had the time. But I need to sit down with you guys and have a strategy. But I need you to write this down: Institute of Veterans and Military Families. I thought I shared it with you, but Sarge, you got to go to the next conference that they have and bring Gino with you. But it's a program at Syracuse University, and it's free training to military and their spouses, right? They also train on, they do entrepreneurship training. Say, for example, they have a relationship with 9 universities across the country, 9-week program that you can apply for. They even have what they call boots to business. It depends what decade you were in, but a lot of them, it's for everyone, and all the major corporations, and Lyft has joined, right? So they have a program, say, for example, if you want to get in hospitality in the restaurant business, right? They have a program at Cornell University. Right. Then they got a program at University of Florida. Then they got one at Tulsa University. But Institute of Veteran Military Families, go and look at their programs. And all of this is free training for you to, I know you ain't working much, but to build you up and take your business to the next level. But you get to see other veterans like yourselves. And so I went through their program as a woman. They have a program for the women, veteran women inspired for the spirit of entrepreneurship. So I went to that in 2013. Then I started going. I worked for a veteran organization, got them involved. So now I speak at their organizations. I speak, I attend their conferences. I bring others with me. They have a program with the Inc. magazine that's the Vet 100 and the Vet 50. And there's a lot of Black businesses, Hispanic businesses who I know, and even one, it's called Universal Spartan. You should probably talk to him, because he said he made a lot of money during the pandemic because all of his products and services were made in the United States. And then he provided all of the masks and things like that to the veteran nursing homes, right? So I'm connected, very much so, right? And I want to bring you guys along. And what I want to do is, when I get an opportunity at Lyft, we all have employee resource groups. And so they have a veteran group, and I'd love to have you guys come and talk to them about, have they applied for the disability? And I didn't get mine till 2019, and I've been out since 1983. Wow. And it had affected a lot of my decision-making, right? And I never talked about it for years until I went to an event. And as a woman, I'm not gonna say which event, but it was a military event. And I went, and there was this guy from Walmart, this white executive, and I'll just do it. So anyway, we're all hanging out after the, after a conference, y'all hanging out, in the lobby and at the bar area. So nobody couldn't believe that I was like 59 at the time or something like that. Oh, I can't believe. Then he comes to me and says, "You have great teeth." I said, "Thanks." Then he said, "You have great," right? And that has been a bone of contention for me for so long, right? He ended up getting fired and everything like that, but that took me back. And someone's like, "Well, that's not a big deal." Don't tell me what's not a big deal, right? Right. That came back from when I was in the military, you know? And that's why I got out, because I should have been modeling over there. I should have been traveling over there. I should have been having no baby, getting married, anything, but it took me, it kind of stripped that from me, And then I'm constantly talking to my fellow veteran women who have been totally violated. I haven't been violated like they have, but they don't even want to talk about it. They don't, I'm trying to figure out, how do I get them out of that space, right?
Yeah. And that's one of the things, that's one of the things that we do in our program, because what I tell veterans all the time, I said, now, PTSD is how it affects you. No one can tell you how it affects you, okay? And one of the things that we're trained to do as veterans is suck it up and drive on. That doesn't mean we don't feel it, but what happens once you retire or get out and become a civilian, and now something can take you back to that. And the reality is, what I tell vets is, they have funds to take care of that.
Yeah.
You don't have to sit there and I will tell you from talking to many women veterans over the years of doing these programs, and I hate giving out a number because don't have it written down, but I can tell you it's definitely probably over 85% of the women we talk to that are military sexual trauma. And a lot of times, Brenda, is like you say, maybe they wasn't physically violated, but insinuations. Hey, come by my place, do
Yeah.
this. If you do this, you can get promoted, blah, blah,
Right.
blah. Oh, you ain't
And
this. And it's psychological, right? And I know we got to start winding down the interview right now. I'm gonna get kicked to my son, but it's been phenomenal, and we're not done talking, right? We
and I
may be
want to
done
bring
with
more
this
to the
segment.
table, and maybe we can have, Brenda conversation, have Brenda, I can ask questions and share, because I got so many friends and women that if I could get them over the threshold to at least fill it out, right?
Oh
I
yeah, and we
see
would
let
help them
them
with
do
that
that.
because we would gladly help them with that because a lot of times when I'm talking to women, I don't tell them, I say, look, I don't want to get in the story of your
Right.
particular story because I don't want you to break down. But I said, let me just give some examples of what military sexual trauma is. And when I give them the example straight from the VA regulation and I
Mhm.
read that, they're like, oh, that's me. And I'm like, oh, that's 70% PTSD, which equates to if I'm looking at that chart, from a 2022 pay scale, if you just got one child, you're there sitting there, that's $1,615 a month.
Yeah, and
What
they're
are we talking
struggling,
about?
and a lot of them are struggling. A lot of them are poor,
Mm.
and then one of my friends got hers because she was talking about how she was like downplayed, disrespected when she tried to have a voice, when she tried to speak up.
Yeah.
And that was what she told, because then that affects you later when you go in environment. So like for me now, when I see older white males that look a certain way with glasses, I don't even want to be around, and I won't go in a bar area. That's now, right? Because of that situation that happened. And I've never been fearful like that, but then that affected me. And I'm like, because as I talked about my story and my education and my background to be reduced to my female parts, and I'm in a professional environment. And then what that does as a Black woman and racism in this country, and how we didn't even have a choice when we were violated, right? So I'm very adamant about that. So, and I'm pretty happy and joyous, but I walk around because I know that there are answers. I've been through the fire. I've come out on the other side. And as I said, last March, right before I started my job, I was sleeping in my girlfriend's basement, who we were all military brats together at Fort Campbell High School, right? Because I've been up and down, and they know me, and they gave me soft places to land. And then now I have this opportunity. Like I said, I exposed 50 organizations and Black businesses, minority business, diverse business to my senior executive leadership at Lyft last week, and they're so excited. You can see some of the things they're saying on LinkedIn. So I'm just here to help. Here to help veterans. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm gonna kick it to my son and let him get the final question in. And we, like I said, we're not done. This is phenomenal. But son, go ahead. I'm gonna let you get that final question in.
Yeah, Brenda, man, I mean, it's been such a pleasure hearing your story. I mean, you just have such a diversity of just experiences. It's a pleasure to listen to. And I think, this is all about Convos with Heroes. And the way that I can see that you've been a hero is you've been an advocate for people.
Yes.
In so many different ways, and how you work with minority organizations and the things that you do to help other veterans, and how you continue to send folks our way to have conversations with us about getting their benefits. I mean, you're just a real advocate, and definitely appreciate that about you. And I definitely look forward to talking more with you about that. But just considering your life story, the question we always like to ask at the end of our interview is, really kind of looking back at your life, and when your life is over, what do you want people to remember you for? Tell us that.
I'm all emotional thinking about this because so many people have helped me along the way, right?
Mhm.
And that I really tried to, what is that old gospel song? If I can help somebody, what is that? What is that, Ranger? I can't remember. If I can help somebody,
I don't know which
I
one.
gotta find
My
it.
wife's a singer, but yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
But if I
yeah.
can help somebody along the way, then my living will not be in vain.
Not be in
Right?
vain. There you
Yeah,
go.
my
There you
living will
go.
not be in vain if I can just help somebody, because I was blessed with the family and my aunt, and I'm getting ready to even do my podcast and begin to tell my story. So you guys are helping me, push me, out there. But people have helped me, even during COVID when I was laid off and thought I wasn't gonna be able to pay my rent. A veteran organization when I got laid off, Michelle, I love her. This other guy, Kevin, they got me out of that funk. They said, Brenda, you got all these skills, go back to corporate. I left 9 years. I just came back, right? Because of all the stuff I had suffered through racism, trauma, abuse, taking care of an elderly sick mother, right? And raising children. And they helped me get back on my feet, right? She told me about ways to she helped me get my rent paid, other things. And then I went to this organization. They paid for me to get my postgraduate degree in digital marketing. I finished that too, right? In the midst of all of that, somebody helped me. So if I could just help somebody, and that I really cared, and wanted people's lives to be as phenomenal as mine has been able to be.
Wow. Awesome.
Brenda, man, and that's powerful. And you know what? You've helped so many people, and you continue to help people. And thank you. Thank you. If you hadn't heard that, thank you for all you've been doing, and all you continue to do to help.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Red, yellow, black, or white. I send them to you. I'm on the plane. I'm somewhere. You got your blah blah blah. You need to this. Right. Send it. Well, yeah, but no, I appreciate you guys, because I just saw you on LinkedIn. Either you reached out to me or I reached out to you. And then I wasn't quite ready because I had just done mine, but I need to make this over the next quarter to go ahead and get mine done. And I'll talk offline about what my experience was in getting mine. And I should have gotten more, but I'll talk about that.
Awesome. Let's do it. Let's do it.
Okay. Love you guys. Now, next time in Atlanta, we got to.
Hold on one sec.
Yes.
Sorry. So yeah. I definitely after we finish up, let's talk through when we're going to connect again. But I always like to pass over to my dad to close it out, and then we'll kind of connect that a little bit more after that. All right.
All right, I got to close out this call with Miss Brenda Smith. It's been phenomenal. We've had an incredible time. This is Ranger Johnson. We're talking about Convos with Heroes, and you know how I got to finish the call. I'm telling you to stay in the fight.